Welcome to Paint and Sip, brought to you by Arlington County Parks and Recreation. Today, instructor Jennifer Droblin is going to walk you through how to create a winter landscape painting. We hope you enjoy it. The painting that we're going to do today is based off a photo I found of the Shenandoah Mountains. So I hope you have a copy handy. You should have a 9x12 canvas board, a couple brushes, glass of water to clean your brushes with, and some acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is great because essentially you're painting with plastic, which means it dries quick and you can do lots of layering. So we just need the primary colors today. So red, yellow, blue, and the two values, white and black. The other thing I like to work with primarily is with a sponge. So hopefully if you did pick up a kit from us, a sponge is in there as well. But I think we should go ahead and get started. Looking at this photograph, you will see that there is a sort of a warm sense in the snow. So we're going to actually convey that first. We're going to season the whole canvas first with a nice warm color. And the reason why we're going to do that for two reasons actually. One is it's going to add an element of dynamism to your painting. And the other reason is that you want to sort of get over this block of having this blank white canvas. So let's go ahead and put a nice warm layer down first. And the warm layer that I want to use is sort of this color here that you see in the snow. You've got this nice, it's almost pinkish. I know it's a little hard to see, but there's some pink and sort of a warm orange here in the snow and in the background. It's going to be hard to capture once we start to put on these cool layers. So let's make that color first. And how we're going to do that is we're going to use just a tiny bit of red. And that's going to be the very first thing we do. A little bit of red and a little puddle of yellow. And I'm using just a dry sponge first to start. Maybe even just add a little bit of water just to kind of give it a little bit of thinness. And then I've got my puddle of yellow, and then I'm just going to take my brush and do a big scoop of white and set that aside. Maybe add a little bit more red to get that nice rich orange. Maybe just a little bit more of the white. And I'm just going to cover, my whole canvas. And I know this seems really counterintuitive, but actually having a complementary color underneath your, as your underlayer, actually really does make your finished painting pop. Remember, when working with photographs, you're actually taking something that that was taken with one eye, right? The camera has only one camera eye, and our face has two eyes, right? So in our photographs, you don't really see you see more of a flatness with just one camera eye. It flattens the landscape. But if you were to see this in person, you'd be able to see a little bit more dimension. Of course, you'd be able to see some depth, right, that you maybe may not capture with that camera eye. So in a way, we have to sort of give the illusion that we're in front of this scene and not that a photograph was taken. So we have this now, like this nice warm undertone to work with, and that's great because from here on out, we're halfway done, right? Okay. I think I told you you should have some paper towels on hand. So that's a nice thin layer, and that's going to dry really fast. But we have this color now so that when we do our clouds, some of these colors will just kind of come through when we add another layer. And acrylic painting is really about nice, thin layers that you build up. So I'm going to take my sponge and rinse it off. And I'm going to come at it with another layer. And this time I'm going to add a little bit more white. So I'm going to take part of that puddle. And I'm going to see here, if we were to take this picture and to fold it into 4, just to sort of make it into palatable little chunks. You'll see that that mountain line is pretty much halfway if we were to take the same level of measurements. So about halfway is where you have that mountain line, and then you have this vertical line for half that kind of shows you where like that cloud is here, and then probably about half of a half is where we're going to have our snow line. So I'm going to go ahead and place that in there, and I'm going to just use my sponge again, and I'm just going to go about 1/4 of the way up. We won't have to do too much more with this color other than to add our shadows. But I'm going to do my nice horizon, not horizon line, but my foreground line here. Got more white. Again, that's going to give us some nice dimension. Give it a little bit more white in the front. And then we've got some of this lighter color up just above the mountain. So like I said, we've got this about halfway up. So about halfway is here. And what I want to do is I want to sort of find that as well. And this time I'm just going to use my sponge and just kind of make a couple marks like this. Because the sky's not going to be, I do layers and layers, but I kind of want to have some nice sponge marks here. That kind of goes a little bit across. So I'll follow that too. Just look at how much we can get accomplished just by using the sponge. Some nice bright white there towards the mountain ridge line. So we're gonna a little bit more white there. We're going to let that firm up a little bit. But even just blotting it on like this is a way to do it, and then just sort of blending it a little bit more. There's a couple little bits up here. I'll just go ahead and put those in, because that's going to come in handy for us a little bit later. And all I'm doing is blotting, giving it a little bit of texture. That looks pretty good. I think I'm going to just do a little bit of a lighter down here. Now that that's dry a bit. Like I said, you know, acrylic is working with layers, layer upon layer, nice fine layers. So let things dry, and then go back in when they're dry and add a little bit more. That's a good start. Once we're done with this warm area, like I said, there's There's just going to be a little bit of extra stuff that we're going to do up here in the end and along the lines at the very end. Okay, so now let's take a look at this ridge line here and maybe some of this color. Now, like I said, this is all going to be pretty dry now. It's so quick, it dries so quick when you use such light layers. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of plug in some of this green. So you see there's that green there, and all the way up through here. And this is more of an intense blue, so we're going to leave that area alone. But let's put in some of this light green since we've got some yellow working with us now. So I'm going to take another part of my yellow, and I'm going to just pull a little bit of blue to make a green. A little bit more blue. And because the yellow is a little bit transparent, the acrylic paint we gave you guys today is Dick Blick. It's student grade paint. But the yellow, to make it a little bit more opaque, you do have to add some white. So I'm going to add a little bit of white to that. And I'm going to try to find this green that I have here. Again, having some of that color peek through. But we're going to add a couple extra layers, maybe a little bit more blue than that. There we go. And don't be afraid. Right now we're working with just the background, so don't be afraid to go over where those trees are. Adding a little bit more blue as I go to the left. You see how you can just cover over the worm, but it's still going to peek through, so it's going to give you some nice depth. As I go over, I'm going to add a little bit more blue. And I'm kind of using horizontal marks. And even up here in this, more green and stuff up here. I'll just do some wispy stuff here. Have that kind of come into where our clouds are. And we're going to make that a lot more blue soon. Oops. But just to get some of that color in there. Okay. Again, letting things dry a little bit. Nice light layers. And I'm still just working with the sponge, and like I said, look how much we've got accomplished so far. And even then, let's see, where else can we find some of this green? Actually, I think that's enough green. Let's go ahead and get in there with a little bit more blue. And I think I'm gonna just start to put some of that in over here. There's a little bit of blue over here now too. It kind of looks like it's, oops, didn't mean to do that. Just softening that up a little bit. So you see you're starting to get a little bit more dimension. I'm going to rinse my sponge. So I want to go back with another layer of white. I'll just change my water here. Another thing I'm going to do, just another trick as things are drying, is I'm just going to take, and you can use a wet paper towel and kind of smooth some areas. I'm going to go over with one more layer of that white. So I'm going to just get a little bit more white here. I'm going to do one more layer of this white and some of this spot here to make that pop. There's some along this line. Again, all I'm doing is just going over really lightly with the sponge. I'm finding some of these areas here that need to be lighter. There's some fun stuff happening in there, so we won't touch it too much. But there is a little bit of a soft line there. Sort of indicates where that ridge is. A little bit more up here. Just a little lighter. There's a tiny band of yellow there. Just going to squeak that in. There we go. Some yellow over here. A little bit of yellow in these clouds up here. We'll define those a little bit later, but just kind of having a little bit of yellow in there. Is going to give us enough to work with here soon. And if it's strong, just kind of wipe it out. Just adding a little bit more white in that sky. Okay, and then I'm also, because this layer is starting to show is a little bit darker, so I want to lighten that up too. I'm going to go back with one more light layer over this warm area here. Like I said, I know it's kind of counterintuitive, but it's going to make sense once we put these bright, cool colors in. Open that up a little bit. Okay. All right. Now I think we can start with like the real cool punchy stuff. So let's start by finding this ridge line here. We're going to go back in space. We're going to see there's a ridge there, and we got some of that all ready for us, so we don't have to do a whole lot of anything extra except for start to put in these ridge lines. So I'm going to start by finding that color, which is a little bit of that green. We found it before, but I'm just going to tighten it up with a brush. I'm just going to go in. I think it's about halfway. I'm just going to find that ridge. And then bring that color down so it's sort of a flat plane. And as we move over, it gets a little bluer. I'm just going to add a little bit of white, that blue, maybe a little bit more green. Just going to smooth that up here. And again, because these are kind of flat, what we want to do is we want to sort of match our brushwork to the direction of these mountains. So we got them going and going up. Just gonna blend that in. And we're gonna clean this up here, because that's gonna get very dark very soon. And maybe put in some of what's happening here before we get really dark. I'm gonna just put a little light in there. We're going to get a little bit darker now. And we're going to start to find some of these other things that are happening here. Maybe add a little bit of black this time. We're going to get add a little bit of value. As we get closer to the foreground though, we're going to make black in a different way. But the black that we want to use sort of to mix with this blue in the background is to sort of give it some atmospheric space. Let's see, there's some green there, so we're going to wait on that. I'm not worried too much about these trees, but I do want to show that there's some stuff happening there. So I'm going to just kind of change the texture up here while I put in this darker color. And see, we've got some work already done for us. But now we can kind of define this edge now. I'm doing is just pulling up. And still with light layers, because you got some other stuff happening, so we're going to keep layering in some of this color. But I kind of want to get that ridge line right. And then, like I said, there's some stuff happening here, so we'll just kind of give it some dimension. Okay. All right. Let's put in some of this. I think this is nice and dry now too. So let's go ahead and put in some of this really bright blue, just to kind of show where we got some really nice contrast. So I'm going to take and scoop up this ultramarine blue, and just like the yellow, it's kind of transparent, unless you gotta add a little bit of white to make it just slightly more opaque. And I'm just going to sort of put in these shadows. Where the trees are. And there's some and again, layers are what matters. I'm just sort of jiggling in some of this color. Get some of that with the shadow of that tree there. And then you got some of that up here. It's green. That blue is going to be pretty powerful when we actually leave a little bit of extra areas here. When we start to put in the trees. I'm softening some of these tones here. Some stuff is happening. So we got some of that bright blue in there. And I'm just lightly dabbing and adding some extra lines here. Maybe even putting some of that blue up in dabs, because some of those shadows on the left side of the trees have those blues in there. So we don't want to lose that. And we're going to approach these trees a little bit differently, because if you kind of see, you've got some sun that's hitting it, and it's going to be really hard to get those lights back. So we're gonna go in first with a light tree, and then we're going to go back over it once it's dry with a dark tree. This is not something you can accomplish with watercolor. So if you're working on watercolor, you might what you might want to do is use a masking fluid, or just be really, really careful to save your whites. But let's put this in first. It's actually a yellowy, got like a yellowy color here. Yellowy greeny kind of color. And what I want to do is just kind of gently plug in some of these. Now again, I'm just dabbing it. Some areas here. And this goes up. This guy is a little bit farther over. So just dabbing, putting in some punches of color for the highlights there. Right there in the middle is that tree. And just dabbing in, see, just dabbing in some of these tones. Same here, there's a tree here. This shadow, I'm gonna have to redefine. Something going on there too. And while I have that color, I'm gonna go back in and sort of add where those clouds are hitting a little more yellow too. So when you have your brush loaded, try to refine the colors that you're using. Like, oh yeah, okay, this is a good place to put and soften this color. And you got some other colors up here you can soften. And even down here, where the colors are kind of that ridge line there. And that color comes in like those sunbeams. What you can do is you could take a little bit of a wet paper towel and bring that color down. Make it look a little softer. All right. And again, we're just going to keep finding, let's find more of that blue there. There's more of that blue right there and there. Just keep finding some of these colors. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this with a really light wash of that blue. So I just added water because I'm realizing that that green is a little warm. That makes it a little bit better. That little ridge line there that needs to be defined a little bit more. Okay. Blue over. And we do have some nice blue up top again that we can go back into. A little water blob there. That really did something. Carve out some of these clouds. It's such a weird spot. I don't know how that happened. Let's see, let's fix that. I'm just gonna do a quick sometimes your finger is the best tool. It's weird, it's a weird thing, weird spot. But it's going to add a little bit of interest if it's done right. Okay. Some dark in there. Okay. So again, I'm just going to go back in an extra layer before we start to really hit it with that dark green. Again, just keep trying to find those areas in the snow. Don't have to be perfect. All right, I'm going to switch brushes because now I want to start to do all this fancy tree stuff. Fancy tree stuff. And now's a good time to do it because things are drying and we're going to be really careful. We have to be careful when we do this. So we're going to go in with a little bit of, it's going to be dark green. So I'm going to mix my yellow and my blue together with my black. And I'm going to start at the base of the tree and just sort of plug in some of these darker colors. And I wish I had a flatter brush. I can show you a trick which involves a fork. you can take and scrape and make the lines. But I think what I really want is a smaller brush. An even smaller brush. Now, if you don't have a smaller brush like this, what you can do is you can use the back of one of your brushes and just blot it in. But I just want to sort of add in some of this darker color to show that there's a tree there. And then this guy kind of comes up a little bit over the halfway part. So, and then you just use a little, this guy comes down. So you make a line, and then you just start to wiggle down. Get a little bit darker. But try not to get rid of that white that you've added. As you go. And don't lose those blues either. You need them. All that work you did, make sure you don't get rid of it. And just kind of have it go into this little area here where that shadow is. See how nice that looks. And you just keep going. Go to the next tree. Giving it some really nice definition. A little bit of green. Again, I'm just dabbing it in. Because really what you want to do is give the illusion of the tree. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? I mean, who's really going to look at the picture? They're going to see your painting. Just really light marks, and try not to cover up any of the good stuff that you have under there. Once you've got this down, then all you do is just redefine some of your areas here. Because some of that dark is right there, right at that edge, because that's a nice hard line there. Just take your time. I'd hit that one back up with another bit of white. Here's another little dude over here. Spot there. Nose part. Nice clean edge. And same on this side too. Yeah. I turn this a little bit so I can get a better angle. There we go. And I'm going to take my brush and sweep that up a little bit. And now that I've got some of that in there, I can go back in with some of my blue and even further define it. That little tree go. And then of course, I can't leave the sky alone. Just keep adding. Because one extra layer, a little extra layer of the light colors is not going to hurt it. Actually, I think what it's going to do is it's going to make it prettier. So I'm just kind of softening this up too. And then there's some nice edges. So soften that up. And see all the things you can do with just the primary colors. You can get all fancy and get another, I mean, this blue is not going to be a perfect match, right? Because this is a way more, that's more of a cerulean blue, but it's going to get you close enough. You could do some really fun things in these clouds. So I'm just going to add some darker edges, and then the very last thing I'm going to do before I finish my painting is hit these clouds with some really nice, crisp, light edges. I think it's a little blue right there too, doesn't it? There's some little atmospheric quality there. Just have it come on down. So that right there is they're on the same plane there. There we go. And if you see, we've got this edge here. I'm going to crisp that up again. And a little bit of, there we go. Clean that up a bit. You can tell you got a little bit of some nice, really light touches. Add a little bit more fullness. There we go. Take a look at what color I've got on my cleaning this up a little bit. A little bit of a lighter. Again, light layers make such a difference. And then this guy has, it's a little more orange. Teeny tiny bit. But with some white so that we don't go overboard. Nope, that's not gonna work. That might be a little bit closer to what we want. And we're just gonna plug that in over here. So see, we didn't really just fully abandon the red. You want to kind of include that. A little bit up here, up here. A little bit of stuff up here. Now we're gonna do some defining of these clouds. So we're just gonna tap just a little bit this color here. Just going to tap it. Give us some of those nice edges. Blend that in a bit. And if you really wanted to be expressive, you can just plop some colors down, just to kind of hit it with. Kind of like that. Okay. And again, just try to find some of these lines, these ridge lines, layer by layer. Don't forget to use your finger. And I'm going to soften. This is one of the last things I'm going to do is just soften this line here. It kind of just disappears, doesn't it? There you go, just like that. And I'm going to take this up just a little bit. Yep, and I forgot to put this little guy back in. Just try to find the areas that you can soften and redo. Mix I said I was going to use a different type of black. What you can do is you can mix the 3 primaries together to get a really nice sort of a deep brown. And that might give you a nice variation of a color. It looks a little more violet, but when you get it right, it makes it like a nice dark brown. See how that's not too far different. I'm going to use that just to get a little bit more of this area here. That really is like the most important part, is getting that line right. And I think I'm going to leave that alone. I think if I had a little bit more time, I would probably keep working in the sky, maybe doing a little bit of a wash. So maybe let that dry and we'll come back in with a wash and we'll do, yeah, let's give it a couple minutes and we'll finish it up. Okay, we've let our friend dry for a little while and dry to the touch, which is great. And so we're just going to add some nice final finishing touches to the painting. I'm going to use a wider brush this time. And I'm going to just do a little bit of a white, soft white wash here over top. Just to kind of tie everything together. There's some areas here just to tie together. And there is some, a little bit of blue here. Again, just taking a little bit of water and just tying some areas together. A little bit more of that blue. And rinse that off. And just a little bit more of that white in here. Like a really bright, oh, there's a water drop. I want those. That really bright area here. Looks like that sun is touching and coming through. And a little bit along here. Just to finish that up a little bit. Got a little bit of texture and this ground here. Add in a little bit more of this blue dabbing it in. Clean that up just a tad. But also to make it a little bit more rich of a blue. A little bit more painterly. This one can be a little bit more blue too, so just add that. And again, I'm going to take that paper towel, bring that down a little bit to soften. And my very last steps are going to just be doing some small touches in the areas here, some dark areas here among some of the and again some dark areas in here still. But for the most part, I think I'm happy with what I did. So when you are finished, make sure you sign it. All artists sign their pictures. And what's great about a canvas panel is you can pop it easily into a frame. And I think I'm pretty happy with this guy. So thank you for joining me, everyone, and happy Paint, Build, Create Day. And make sure you join us for other programs. We have a lot of fun. So thanks again, and have a wonderful creative day. Bye.